Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here today at the event about to take off the return of Chinese outbound tourism. I'm David Orlandi, EU Partnership Coordinator for EU SME Centre, and I will be guiding today throughout this event. First of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt thank you, not only to you attending this event today, but also to the organizers, the Belgian Chinese Chamber of Commerce and the Italy-China Council Foundation, as well, of course, as our panelists today, Mr. De Witt from the Belgian Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Professor Wolfgang Georg-Gartl from Coatry. So why have you decided today to focus on Chinese outbound tourism? The decision to take a moment to assess what is going on in this economic sector has come from a double evaluation. On the one hand, we know that Chinese outbound tourism to Europe had been a growing trend up until 2019. We had a constant increase. 2019 saw more tourists than 2018. We had strong countries from this point of view, such as France, Italy, and Germany, that received a consistent component of touristic flow from China. But we also saw that after the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a sharp decrease in this sector, of course, related to the travel restrictions imposed due to the pandemic. However, we're seeing that now that these restrictions have been lifted off, most of these Chinese outbound tourism flow is going to once again start. And so we're expecting a relevant flow to arrive in Europe, especially this summer. So the idea is that of nowadays providing to SMEs based in Europe the instruments, the tools to understand how to make the best of this outbound tourism flow and how to create the correct environment, to how to prepare the correct tools, the correct strategies to make the best of this opportunity. So without further ado, I will move forward with the agenda. Today, we're going to have a 2-hour event. After my short presentation, I will leave the floor to the chairman of the Belgian Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Mr. De Witt. And after that, we will have 3 modules covered by Professor Wolfgang Georg-Gartl from Coatry. Each of these modules will focus on a specific component of the Chinese outbound tourism sector. The first one will show where we're standing now. We will try to understand what has happened during the pandemic, what has changed. Of course, we will see that 3 years are a long time span. So a lot of things changed. The partners that were previously there might no longer be there. Strategies that were previously employed could potentially no longer be suitable for the present. So this will be the focus of the first module. The second module will try and explain how should European enterprises react to the new needs and expectations that come with these changes that we had expressed in module 1. And the third module will, on the other hand, try and explain how can enterprises keep their competitiveness in future years. I have left 20 minutes at the end of this event for a Q&A. However, I would also like to stress that it would be best maybe to also have shorter Q&A sessions at the end of each module in order to keep it more engaging, more on point. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to write them in the Q&A slot in the Zoom platform webinar, so that we have the chance of trying and replying to a couple of them at the end of each module. Should we not reply to all of the questions during the intermediate Q&A sessions, we will have a final Q&A session. And also, should we not be able to reply to all of the questions during the sessions, please do not worry. We will try our best to reply by email at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I would like to spend a couple of words on EU SME Centre and its mission before leaving the floor to our speakers. EU SME Centre is an initiative funded by the European Union. It's currently in its 13th year of life. It was launched in 2010. It's publicly funded and all of its services are free of charge for European small and medium enterprises. Its overall goal is that of providing support to enterprises that want to enter or expand in the Chinese market. It's currently being implemented by 6 partners, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. And in order to achieve its overall goal, 5 main services are provided to European enterprises. The first one is the self-diagnosis tool, which is directly accessible on EU SME Centre website, and that allows enterprises to directly assess what is the readiness towards the Chinese market. So should there be any knowledge gap that is highlighted by this tool, there is then the opportunity of accessing the second service, the knowledge component. This one is as well directly accessible on EU SME Centre website, which consists of all the market reports and guidelines, case studies, all the documents overall that EU SME Centre has produced in the past 13 years, and of course kept up to date. So this is, we can think of it as a database of the main information needed for entering the Chinese market. Should that not be enough, should this general knowledge not be sufficient for the enterprise, there's also the opportunity to ask specific questions to our experts based in Beijing. So whilst the knowledge component provides the main instruments, let's say, for accessing the Chinese market, should the enterprise face some specific challenges, this could be the venue for asking questions to an expert that will reply to the specific issues that the company is facing. The fourth service is the training one. The event that we are hosting today would fall under this category. We offer the opportunity of scheduling either trainings or webinar conferences, all the kind of one-on-one or frontal lectures for the enterprises on topic of interest. Of course, this can range from very broad, very general kind of speeches, focusing on, for example, the specificities of the Chinese market, how to access it, how to select the correct partner, red flags to pay attention to. And we can arrive up until very specific, very narrow and detailed topics, focusing on, I don't know, specific sectors. We've had webinars on environmental regulations here with PCCC last year. So depending on the needs of the enterprises, we can very much tailor the event to their necessities. The last component is that of the advocacy, mainly directed at those enterprises that are already based in China, and it focuses on providing a coherent and consolidated voice to those enterprises in order to make it so that they're heard at the governmental level in China. So without further ado, I would like to leave the floor to the chairman of the BCCC, Mr. Bernard de Witt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orlandi. And first of all, thanks a lot to the EU China SME Centre, because what you are doing is really useful for our companies here in Europe, giving them a better knowledge of the Chinese market. And also, I must say, providing a free of charge services, which is always nice for SMEs, especially when they enter Chinese market. I would say also on the name of the Belgian China Chamber of Commerce, it is a real pleasure to cooperate with you. It's not the first time, and I hope not the last one, so that we can provide to our members very useful information like we will do today. Our chamber is regrouping Belgian and Chinese companies here in Belgium doing business with China. Among them, a certain number of companies are active in the tourism sector, and from there, the interest of the event of today. You have, Mr. Orlandi, explained to us what we are going to see today, to listen to today. I would like to introduce our speaker of today, a prominent speaker, Professor Wolfgang Georg Achtel. Professor Achtel has a master in sinology and a PhD in political science, Berlin University. He's the former owner of specialized travel companies. He is a consultant for European tourism companies. He has published extensively articles and books on the topic of tourism. He is a professor in various universities, as well in Europe as in China, as you will see here on his CV on the screen. He has also, he's a director of the China Outbound Tourism Research Institute, the COTRI, I would also very much like to invite our listeners to check regularly. He publishes a newsletter which is really useful, and I really admire him for that, because it's not a half-a-page newsletter. It's really with extensive information, very, very useful for people dealing with tourism and wanting to get more acquainted with Chinese tourists. So we have all questions. We have many questions. What is the situation now? How will it be in the near future? Are we going to see more Chinese tourists in the following months and years? Are they only coming to Berlin and to Paris or London? Are they also going to visit more Bruges? Are they going to visit the Brussels Grand Place? Are they going to visit the Ardennes? I'm speaking here for Belgium, of course. But we are all keen to listen to you, Professor Achtel, and I give you the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction, and so I will try to answer the many important questions you have just raised. And so let me start the presentation I'm going to give to you. Should be this one, so you should see that, yes, okay, we saw that one. So already it was mentioned that the main position relevant for my talk today is that I'm the founder and CEO of COTRI, China Outbound Tourism Research Institute, which has almost 20 years of history. And it was mentioned we have a weekly newsletter called COTRI Weekly. We also published just recently a little book about the situation after the restart of China Outbound Tourism, which actually is published in English, also in French, Italian, Spanish, German. Sorry, we don't have a Dutch version. And we will start in May a more extensive version of our newsletter called China Outbound Tourism Market Intelligence, which also will be done in a couple of different languages. So other than that, yeah, so of course we have been, as has been said, trying for many years to help companies, especially in China, and organizations to make Chinese tourists happy and to earn some money in the process. So let's start by looking at what is the situation now as we are talking. Dr. Taleb Rifai, who I'm happy to call my good friend, the former Secretary General of the UWO, said that in 2021, there is no return to the old normal, but forward to a new, better normal. So that is a quite optimistic way to look at stuff. And so let's see how global tourism, so to give it a little bit of frame, how global tourism has been developing. So first of all, of course, we all know we have been very successful. So the number of trips in 2019 was 5 times the number of trips in 2018. But with the success also came many problems. Remember the discussion about over-tourism, so that tourism is also having a destructive side for the environment, but also for local culture, making things uniform and bringing a city centers which all look the same, with a Starbucks and a Zara and so on. And we already were at the point before the pandemic where it was clear that we will have to change the way tourism is organized, like we have to change many other parts of our economy and our society. And of course, last year, the extreme weather phenomena which were in Europe, which are also in China, showed already that for skiing resorts or for river cruises or for visiting cities during heat waves in the middle of the summer, that this will be tourism formats which might not be able to be going forward in the future. So there was a lot of discussions, and a lot of people were saying, yes, we have to change and things can have to be done in a different way. Arrival numbers are not the only KPI we should use. Unfortunately, comes 2020, 2022, and for China 2023, and tourism starts again. It seems that a lot of these ideas have been forgotten, and many companies, many organizations are trying to go back to the good old times, and that besides a little bit of greenwashing, not so much has changed. But we can see, for instance, one result is that everybody is having an experience of a lack of staff, so that we have the customers back, but we don't necessarily have enough people catering for them back. So this is the global picture where the Chinese tourism is existing within. And of course, before the pandemic, China was about 11 or 12% of the total international tourism. So 1 out of 8 Chinese international travelers came from China. So therefore, of course, what is happening globally is also affecting the Chinese outbound tourism and is affected by the Chinese outbound tourism. So just to remind you, actually, China outbound tourism has a very short history. It was only in 1997 that the Chinese government acknowledged that there are actually some citizens who want to travel to other countries at their own cost, just for leisure, just for holidays, and that they need tourist visa for that. So this is just 25 years ago, but within 15 years then, China developed into the largest international tourism source market by 2012, and by 2016, it became the largest market, even if you are not counting Hong Kong and Macau, which are special administrative regions of China, so they are not really international tourism, even though the statistics they are always included. So and it went to a level that 2019, the Chinese market was so important that even the number 2 and the number 3 markets, USA and Germany, put together, were not as big as the Chinese market, both in terms of travels, of trips, but also in terms of the money spent. And as a result, many countries offered for Chinese citizens visa-free, or e-visa, or visa on arrival, or at least multiple entry visa. Unfortunately, Schengen land was the only major exception, so we were already before the pandemic being a bit behind most other competitors by not offering very convenient visa regulations. So just a quick look at the numbers. You can see that within the last 20 years, Chinese outbound tourism has developed from small beginnings, 10 million 2001 to about 170 million 2019. And the interesting part is also, I think, that up to 2014, 15, you can see that the blue part, which is Greater China, so trips to Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, was the driver of growth, but that from 2015, 2016, the rest of the world, so traveling beyond Greater China, became more and more important, and the majority of trips were going there. Then, of course, you can see 2020, we had almost 20 million trips, most of them happening in the first 2 months of the year before the pandemic really struck. And then 2021, 2022, there was only a very limited amount of trips. And our forecast for this year is that we will go back. And so to answer Mr. David's main question, will the Chinese come back? We think yes, and they will reach about 2/3 of the level of 2019 globally. For Europe, it might be a little bit less in percentage. It might take a bit longer to come back here, but certainly there will be many Chinese tourists, especially the second half of the year, coming back to Europe. So where have they been going? Obviously, the majority of trips is going to within the region, and we can see that some of the big European destinations have been sometimes among the top 10. For Belgium, of course, most importantly, the big neighbor France has been sometimes on position 9 or 10, but about half of Chinese outbound tourism is covered by the top 5 destinations: Hong Kong, Macau, South Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. So to Europe, there were close to 100 million border crossings if you do not count Hong Kong, Macau. And of these, according to some counting, 40 million had Europe as a final destination. And again, tourism statistics, I'm sure you're aware, are always tricky. So this is a rather huge number for Central and Eastern Europe, because actually Vladivostok is a part of Eastern Europe, according to the official tourism statistics. So Russia is included, and that's why we have the discrepancy. David just mentioned 11 million trips, and this is a tourism economics table, and they talk about 40 million because they include Russia. Anyway, we could see that if you include trips to Hong Kong, Macau, then Europe's share was about 10% in 2018 and the same in 2019. For Belgium, the number of Chinese arrivals had been growing with the growth of the market, and in 2015 there were 209,000 arrivals of mainland Chinese citizens, and this level was kept more or less. It was always something around 200,000, 195,000, 205,000. So Belgium, unfortunately, since 2015, has been able to attract 200,000 visitors per year, but has not been growing, whereas, of course, the total market continued to grow. So in terms of market share, Belgium has been losing since 2015, and you can see this maybe on the right-hand side more easily. So this is long haul, so except Greater China, and you can see that the total market. So if you look at 2015 compared to 2019, that there has been a substantial growth in the total number of outbound trips, whereas for Belgium this was flat. So there is obviously room for improvement to get more Chinese outbound tourists to Belgium, which already I can say at the beginning, the good news is it might be easier than it was before, because Chinese tourists are looking more for new destinations to discover, new destinations, so which would put Belgium, and especially also Belgium outside of Brussels, in a much better position than before. So what we saw already up to 2019 is that there has been, of course, with the development of the experience of Chinese travelers traveling over a couple of years, that there was an increasing sophistication. So I used to be, has been mentioned, a tour operator back in the 1990s myself. Our customers were almost all of them first time out of China and were really running around starry-eyed, looking at everything. So now, of course, you have people who have been traveling for 10 years or have been even a student outside of China or worked for a Chinese company outside of China. So, of course, they have much more knowledge and experience. And also you could see that there has been a growing segmentation of the market based on experience, but also based on the development of special interests. You could also see that it was at the beginning mostly middle-aged people traveling, but we see now more young and more old travelers, so old meaning 55 plus, best ages. And we can see that also up to 2019 and certainly also in the coming years, education and health, so for the young and the older, will be two big topics when we talk about tourism development. And of course, people have much more information than they used to have, thanks to the internet and thanks to having access to information from people who have already been to the place you might be interested in. And a very important part to mention is that the language problem, which was always a key barrier for the development of tourism, has become much smaller. More people have learned to speak English, but also you have now these little machines which help you. So you can speak in Chinese, and the machine will speak in French or in Dutch or in English or whatever language. So therefore, it is also now much easier for Chinese to travel by themselves or in small groups without having much language problems. But as we said that for most destinations in Europe, including Belgium, you had still an increase of arrivals and overnights, but the market has been growing faster. So the market share of Europe has been decreasing, and also the idea that everything is concentrated on basically arrival numbers covered up the problems of low yields and also rather low levels of satisfactions for the visitors. So we did a lot of research and it was normally Chinese visitors to Europe would say it was okay, but it was not wow. So they were happy but not overwhelmed with joy from their experiences, because main point was that they normally said that the products and services were not enough adapted to their specific needs. But also the hosts were sometimes not very happy, and in this protests against over-tourism, several times Chinese tourists were singled out as one of the problems, especially this big package tours, which were very visible. Even so, of course, in fact, for a place like Barcelona, only a few % of the travelers were actually Chinese. So, and for Europe, one key problem has been that in the past, most of the trips went to a limited number of destinations, so that of course France has been very successful with Chinese tourists, but actually if you look at the numbers a bit more closely, it is not France, it is Paris and Paris, and that's true for some other countries as well. So for Italy, it is Venezia, Firenze, Roma, and Milano. That's it. So there are very, very few Chinese tourists in the other parts of Italy, and we will have another webinar on the 14th of April in Palermo for Sicily, and that will be a topic certainly also there. So there is a lot of room for the rest of the countries to get more Chinese visitors as well. A very important point is to realize who is traveling outbound. So maybe as also reflecting on why they were not so very super happy with the services they got here. So we are clearly talking about the top 10% of the Chinese population. This is about the number of people having a passport, and that's also about the number of people owning a car. And when we look at luxury tourism, it's even just the top 1% of the population. So if you look at the bottom of this table, you can see there are about 150 million people with a higher middle or high income, but higher middle income starts at less than $10,000 per year, mind you. So that is less than $1,000 per month. And if you leave out this bracket and you start with a bracket which is 18,000 something dollars a year, that's 71 million. So this is 10% and about 5% of the population. So still the question is, how can they afford a trip to Europe from $1,000 a month income? And the answer you can see on the right-hand side, that for most of the visitors coming to Europe, they get their income, their travel money, rather from wealth than from salaries. So rather from having earned money in the last 20 years with real estate, buying and selling apartments, or with stock market deals where they had some insights into which sectors of the industry the government will support, so that they could buy the right stocks a bit earlier than other people. So, which also means that now when the Chinese economy is slowing down, it might be that the rich people are not getting richer than as rich as before in the same speed. It might slow down, or they might even lose a little bit of money, but they will still have enough money in their bank account for a little trip to Europe. So during the pandemic, let's have a look at the numbers. So on January 23rd, in the middle of the Chinese New Year 2020, the Chinese government stopped group travels from China because of the news coming from Wuhan. And for self-organized travelers, they could still travel in February until the borders were closed by the Chinese government, but also we closed the borders to the Chinese. We didn't let them in anymore. And so therefore you can see that in the first quarter of 2020, we still had 14.5 million trips because that was mostly January, February. And then the number crashing down in the second quarter 2020 to 225,000, so almost nothing. And since then, it was always something in the area of 2 million. But most of these trips actually, for especially 2021, 2022, were going to Macau, because Macau was the only destination for Chinese where they could go without having to go into quarantine on arrival and without having to go on quarantine going back to the mainland, because Macau was lucky that for a long time, almost until the end of the pandemic, there was not a single case in Macau. So if you take out the travelers to Macau, you can see that there was for 3 years very little travel, and mostly special interests or important business people, or also doctors or other experts traveling, some family reunion, but practically zero leisure tourist. And for Europe, you can see accordingly. So the left column in blue, that is 2019, how it was, and then you see the numbers crashing down, and for Western Europe, so we were below the million, and mind you, also many of these trips were actually Chinese passport holders going from one country in Europe to another country in Europe, so that they were actually not coming from China, but this was somebody living in France and coming to Belgium, for instance. So what happened, and that has also influence on the development of outbound tourism, is that Chinese domestic tourism developed very strongly, especially in 2021, when it was not a big problem to travel within China. In 2022, we had more lockdowns, and it was more difficult to cross the provincial borders. So, but in 2021 especially, that was not the case. And as all the rich people had to stay in China and spend their money in China, the industry, and also the industry, had no outbound income anymore. So there was a lot of development with new theme hotels and new structures, new products, and you had trends like starting from staycation, that people were discovering their own cities they were living in, but also self-drive and caravaning, so camping, including glamping, and other nature-based outdoor activities all became much more fashionable, and also visiting smaller places, so going to rural area, living the simple life like a peasant for a few days, and also more family trips, so that the Chinese also learned about the importance of solidarity within your family in times of crisis, so that and also the government, of course, like everywhere else, the Chinese tourism industry was helped by the government with a lot of different subsidies and other things, so that they could survive. Some of them also were very flexible, and they used especially their big customer databases to enter retail, and so you had stewardesses selling online cosmetics in their uniform, some beautiful ladies, and things like that. What also happened was that within the general political development of China, moving towards a more, let's say, patriotic approach, that it also was seen as being politically correct to spend your money in China. And you have Hainan, which is a duty-free island now, so you could also do the shopping in China, so that it is now the case that traveling in China is no longer seen as something only poor people do or uneducated people do. And if you are somebody important, you have to travel internationally. So we have a new competitor, which is domestic tourism. And well, I can say that in last summer, we made a forecast that by the beginning of 2023, China will open its borders because they have to. We started to, my co-author Gary Bowerman and we started to write a book, which was supposed to be finished by the end of 2022, about the new wave. And lo and behold, that forecast was right. And in on December 26, 2022, the Chinese government announced that the borders will be opened after they had already radically shifted their COVID-19 policy, basically from one day to the other. They were going from lockdowns and daily testing to saying, oh, it's not that harmful and everybody has to take care of him or herself. So we have no idea how many people died in China, probably a couple of millions, several millions, but nobody counted anymore. And for the big cities like in Beijing, in November and December, practically everybody got COVID. And after 1 month, so the wave had swept through the population. And then people were saying, okay, now it's over. That's what some people call a dirty vaccination. So let's go on. And then in this year, first in early January, traffic to Hong Kong was liberated. And but I think the timing of the Belgian Chamber of Commerce and of course the EU SME Centre is perfect for this webinar, because it is just a few days ago on March 15th, 2023, that China re-established all visa, including leisure tourism visa for everybody coming to China. And accordingly, it is to be expected that now those countries, the European Union and those Schengen countries, which until now have not issued tourist visa because they were waiting for a reciprocal agreement, will now also certainly in the next few weeks start to issue tourist visa for Chinese visitors to their countries. So in Europe, maybe it's interesting to mention that there are two countries where Chinese people can travel visa-free. One is Serbia, and since a few weeks also Albania. So as we said, the arrivals by Chinese visitors within Europe were mostly a result of trips by Chinese expats or students or spouses living in Europe and often trapped by the pandemic for long periods of time. So traveling within Europe from one country to another. And there were also, of course, not only the visa problem, there were almost no flights available. And 4 months ago or 5 months ago, a economy class ticket, Frankfurt, Beijing, would cost something like 8,000 euros if you could get one. So now, fortunately, also the prices for air tickets are back basically to 2019 levels already. So because this was the hurdles which were slowing down and are slowing down the visits of Chinese to Europe. Many of them had their passports expired, so they had to get a new or a renewed passport. We still have the problem that in China, the consulates and the service organizations working with visa applications, of course, had almost no manpower anymore. There was nothing to do. So as far as I know, for Germany, it still takes 6 weeks to get a business visa. For instance, at the ITB Berlin a few weeks ago, there was no China stand and no Chinese delegation because even so they had an invitation from the Berlin city government, they just couldn't get a visa on time. And there were not many air routes and prices were high. But we can see that these factors are all disappearing, and that is also, I think, the question which was asked. So when will they come? So there were in January, February, a lot of journalists were calling me from Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, many other publications, CNN and ask, okay, are there 10 million Chinese tourists coming tomorrow? And the answer was no, of course not. They can't, because not that they don't want to travel, but that they first need a passport, they have to apply for visa, and air transport has to come back, and then they can we have to give them a visa, and then they can come back. So this and all this by May, June, the latest, that problems will have gone away. So looking at the time, I will go a bit faster through that, so you can get the slides afterwards, I think, from EU SME Centre, so you can read up. But just to say, the changes in demand and expectations are, of course, connected to which kind of market segment you're talking about. So 2019, we had 170 million trips. Obviously, these are different people with different interests and different expectations. So any answer to a question what the Chinese tourists want is right and wrong, because the Chinese outbound tourist obviously is not existing. And so for Belgium, certainly very important is the first tier city inhabitants. So that is normally seen as Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen. So each of these cities has much more inhabitants than Belgium as a country. And these were the people who started to travel first. So they have more travel experience and on average more money, and so they are probably have already been to Paris and been to Milano and to Munich and so on. So they will be interested to go as repeat visitors to new places. Whereas the first-time visitors, well, you still have this what has been the caricature of the Chinese tourists, 45 people in a coach, jumping out of the coach, taking a picture, doing some shopping, eating only Chinese food, and traveling in Europe to like 7 countries in 8 days. This market is still existing, but it is disappearing. So there was a survey where people were asked last year, how will you travel when it's possible again? And just 7% said, I will travel with a package tour. So this is something which is now, if you want to impress your neighbors and your friends, that is not what you are doing. And it's also actually this kind of customers are the least interesting. You don't earn much money from them, maybe except the retailers, and they normally create a lot of problems and are more likely to be noisy and rude and annoying your other visitors. For Brussels, I think, and for Belgium, a market segment which is very important is Chinese people already living in Europe. So we have more than 100,000 Chinese students in Europe. We have probably about the same amount of Chinese expats working here. So I'm based in Hamburg, and we have more than 500 Chinese companies here because of the harbor, but also the Bank of China and so on. So that these people are already in Europe. They normally speak English. They don't have a visa problem. They have a Schengen visa, and especially with the expats, normally they're here without their family, so they are alone. They are bored. So to offer them to come to some nice part of Belgium for a long weekend trip or something is certainly a very good idea. And the number of Chinese students is also very likely to increase in the coming years in Europe because the United States are at the moment seen as not the best place for Chinese to go to. So if Chinese say I'm going to study in the USA, they will have to come up with some good arguments why they go there. So Europe will get more students, and maybe also Europe in the sense of the EU, so not UK, will get more because if you are a Chinese student in the UK and you have a UK visa, that means you do not have a Schengen visa. You cannot so easily go to other parts of Europe. And so when we talk about how do people travel, very often there's only a black and white discussion that you say, okay, you have this package tour people who only go to the most important places and stay very short time, and you have FITs, individual travelers who organize everything by themselves, and which are difficult for tour operators to earn money from. In fact, this is not the real picture, it's rather a scale, and in the middle is something which is called semi-organized travelers. And we did a study with Trip.com, the biggest tourism company in the world, in 2018, and came up together with them with the estimation that probably there will be a break of the market in three more or less equal sized parts. So one is group tours, one is FITs, and the other is customized travel, so where you have a small group of people who know each other before, not just meeting at the airport for the first time, but friends, family, neighbor, colleagues, whatever, that they go to a tour operator and say, okay, we are a group, we are 7 adults, 2 children, we have this budget and we want to go there, and our interest is this and this. Make a nice itinerary for us, so give us a customized trip, and they might even have a tour guide, but then they tell the tour guide what they want to do, not the tour guide is pushing them into some forced shopping, so he can earn a commission. So this is something where, again, you have a good chance that if you offer some special products, some special activities, that they will be included in such customized tours. Oops, sorry. And yeah, so I briefly mentioned this already. China is also getting older fast. Last year was the first time that the Chinese population shrank by 1 million or so. So the peak has been reached. And you can see in the graph on the bottom right that even the percentage of people 65 plus will grow dramatically in the coming years. And if you take the 55 plus, then it is already a quarter of the population, or if you 60 plus, it's already a fifth of the population. So these people have more time, and many of them also have more money, so enough money to go for a trip, and so they might be able to travel for several weeks. And Europe and Belgium, of course, has a lot of history and culture to offer, and they will not come for the sunshine, they will not come for the beach, so but they will come to a large extent for culture and history, and that can be foods, and certainly you have a number of excellent restaurants in Belgium. History, where you have places like Waterloo and many others. So, and they will be interested to go to places which are off the beaten track, and so they will not only come in summer if you offer them good products. So, and maybe let me finish this module by discussing a question which I've been asked a million times. Some people say Chinese people only want to eat Chinese food. Other people say, no, it's not true. They are foodies and they want to taste local food and they spend money on fine dining. Which one is true? And the answer is, of course, I hope you understand this, but now both is true. Depends on who are you talking about. So there are first-time travelers, package tour travelers, and they will be interested to taste local food a little bit, one mouthful, but then they want to eat Chinese food to fill up their stomach, saying that in China, so China outside the USA, China is the biggest market for Starbucks, McDonald's, KFC, Taco Bell, and so on. This is Chinese food from a Chinese perspective. So if they say we want to have Chinese food, that can also be a McDonald's. But you have, on the other hand, the many more experienced travelers who are saying, no, I understand that this is an important part of the local culture and the experience of traveling is to eat local food. And I'm not only interested in tasting the food, I'm also interested in having a cooking class, in learning about the history of some dishes, what's the background story or behavior that in some places, I don't know, if you have a toast, you throw the glass away or you destroy the plates in some parts of Spain and so on. So both is true. And for Belgium, beer, of course, craft beer is a big trend in China, and certainly there's a lot of good craft beer to taste in Belgium. So if you offer food, especially with a story, with rituals, and taking this example of beer, you have different glasses for different kinds of beer. Why is this beer coming in that glass, this kind of glass, and the other one in another kind of glass? That will be something Chinese people will love, that because this is also something they can take a photo of and then put on their social media and tell their friends about. If you do a beer tasting afternoon and give them a certificate at the end that now they're an expert in Belgian beer, that will be something wonderful. So, as we mentioned, we see more independent travelers, so we will see more customized tours and more FITs. So these package tours will go out, and we will see also that there is more nature, more adventure, more authentic experiences, what people are looking at. And last thing to mention is maybe the good news is that a bit surprisingly, if you look at Chinese social media today, nobody is discussing the virus anymore. So for 3 years, the Chinese have been told that outside of China it is very dangerous, and therefore it's very good that the borders are closed. But it seems that nobody has been listening. So because we are regularly checking Chinese social media, and nobody is saying, oh, do they have enough disinfection sprays or something like that? People have more or less in China said, okay, that was a bad dream. Now it's over. Let's be happy. Let's move forward. Let's enjoy our trip. So that is something you could see a lot of forecasts that the most important thing for the European tourism industry will be to keep up a high level of sanitation and hygiene. This is, at least for the Chinese market, not true at all. So we said we need the circumstances making it possible to travel. So the question of leaving China, this is okay again. We see Trip.com said that from the 20% air capacity we have now, we will be back to 50% by June and maybe 80% in the autumn. And as we just said, safety and hygiene seems not to be much of an issue anymore. That's the end of the first module. And as David has been saying, I think we can have a short Q&A session.
Yes, thank you very much, Wolfgang. Of course, if there are any questions, please feel free to write them in the Q&A section here on Zoom. Also during the speeches, so do not worry, we will read them as soon as the module ends. In the meanwhile, should anybody be interested in asking questions and be busy typing them, I would like to ask you a question myself, Wolfgang. Usually, what is the average stay of a Chinese tourist, with a focus, of course, on Europe and, if possible, on Belgium?
Yes. So again, the answer is, of course, that it very much depends on who are you talking about. But if you look at the statistics, you can see that for most European countries, per country, the average stay is just 2 nights. So for Germany, it's at 1.8 nights. For some other places, it's maybe 2.1 night, but no more than 2 nights. And the reason for this is that, of course, still many Chinese are not traveling just to one country, but to a couple of them. So if you talk about the average stay in Europe for a whole trip, that will be rather something like 6 nights, 7 nights, 8 nights, something like that. Not more, because most of the people until now who have been coming to Europe are people who are working. So we see now we will get more pensioners in the future, but until now it was mostly people who work, and most Chinese people work very hard for their money. So you don't have people who had been coming from a rich family, so they inherited money. So almost all the Chinese are first generation rich. So they have only 8 days or 10 days holidays a year, or in many cases they have their own company, and so they work more or less around the clock. So it is therefore typically it is something that in many cases, like they leave on a Friday and they come back the Sunday and the following week, something like that. And it's not only that they are here for a short time, but also they want to cramp as much as activities into this short period of time. So they're not coming here to relax, but to do things. But this is, I think your question is very important, because when we talk about arrivals, and then we see why it's only average is 2 nights or even less than 2 nights. Of course, you can immediately see that it is one of the jobs to do is to let them stay longer. So if you give them a reason why they should stay for a longer period of time, because there's some special activity, then of course you don't. If they stay 3 days instead of 2 days, that's a 50% increase of overnights. Even so, the arrival numbers will be the same as before. So this is one of the hidden problems that many destinations say, hooray, we have a lot of arrivals, but actually they just stay for 2 nights.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. I see that there are no other questions, so I'd say we can move forward with the second module. We're running a bit late since the webinar should end at 12. So if you have... No, what I also wanted to say is if you have any questions, please do write them, and so that we can start also already assessing them throughout the speeches from the professor. So thank you very much, and let's move forward.
Okay, good. So Yeah, so the point is that when we talk about the Chinese market, we talk about people who have really, in many cases, different experiences and different expectations than from our traditional customers. And we just said one key point is that Chinese tourists also sometimes want to relax and spend time with their family or with their loved one, but or go to a beach for a few days. But for that, they will go to Vietnam, to South Korea, to Malaysia, to Bali. They will not travel all the way to Europe just to do nothing here. And also there are a lot of very nice beaches much closer to China, so that they don't come here for beach holidays. So therefore, the idea that they say, okay, we want to do 5 things in one day. You might think, well, I wouldn't like to do this kind of travel, but well, that is, you're not forced to. But if there's an old saying in marketing, the worm has to be tasty to the fish, not the fisherman. So, and like, for instance, I hate karaoke. I don't like karaoke as well. My voice is very bad. But if the Chinese people like karaoke, okay, in your hotel, rent them a room for karaoke with a karaoke machine. You can actually charge money for that. You earn some more money, and the customers will be happy. So it's not you who has to spend your evenings singing karaoke. And so and of course also, as we said, just different market segments. So if you have a 35-year-old Shanghai stockbroker who studied in Harvard, and you have a lady from a smaller city traveling first time outbound, of course they have different needs and experiences. So what you need more than before is that you are clearly getting deep knowledge of the different market segments, and then also see what you have to offer, or which kind of markets segments this is the best thing to engage with, because there's no point in saying I welcome everybody, because your product will be not for everybody. So some characteristics which are for most of the customers true, we just said, shorter amount of time spent with a single activity. So like we said, you do a cooking class, if it should be like 90 minutes or maybe 2 hours, not 2 days, because the Chinese don't really, of course, in that short period of time, you don't really learn much, but it is, you get some ideas, and you get a video and a certificate, so you can show your friends, hey, look what I've been doing. So and because they also have many other things to do. And a lot of China Open Tourism is about bragging, it's showing off to the other people what special things you are doing. So if you have any kind of uniqueness in your experience, that this is the oldest, the most famous one, or this is already Napoleon has been staying in the city, or whatever, or that the hotel director comes down to take a photo with you, all this stuff help people to brag about their experience, helps them to underline the uniqueness of what they are doing. And certification, very important, so helps them with the documentation. So if you have a company offering helicopter flights over your city, make sure that there's a video which is already custom made, and then you put in the little clip where you can see that person, your Chinese customer, entering the helicopter and coming out of the helicopter, so they can show their friends back home the proof that they really did this trip. They're not just making it up. And Something which is a rather a new development is that for many Chinese, they say, we just not only want to have a photo of somebody, we want to meet local people. Again, language barrier is not such a problem anymore, and it is within the general trend of special interest people meet host community special interest people, that this is something also which would be very welcomed if so they can talk to other normal people, so not necessarily professionals, about joint interests. So if this is, we had the example of, for instance, people interested in old technology, in maybe steam engine trains and or other things that they retired engineers meet retired engineers. They will like each other a lot, and they have the same mindset, even so they come from different countries, and adapting to the skill level. So you will have people who come to Europe and they have very faint idea what's the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism. So when they see church, they just say it's more colorful or less colorful. But you will also have a lot of people who had now 3 years time to develop their special interest and to read up many books and look at many videos, who will be experts in Baroque architecture or whatever, Bauhaus architecture, and who will be probably more knowledgeable than yourself about it. So, and you can annoy the people without much knowledge by giving them too much detailed information, but of course you can also annoy those people who are knowing a lot if you treat them like everybody else, and then assuming that they, as they are Chinese, they probably don't know anything about European architecture. So don't be careful with your assumptions. And last thing is to mention is, if there's a child involved, it has to be educational. So Chinese kids are in a very competitive situation back in China, so they have to learn all the time. It's not about that they have fun, but it's always about learning. So, and maybe just one example, what that means is that Chinese people buy wine or craft beer like other tourists, but it will be, in most cases, not really important how this wine is tasting. It will be more important what is the story with the wine and the level of maybe of how famous it is, the level of luxury, so that you know which wine to buy to give to whom as a gift, and maybe they will never ever drink it. So therefore, the label is of more important than the taste of the wine. So same activity but different reasons to do that. And yeah, so we said that if you only look at arrival numbers, that doesn't tell you much about your economic success. It doesn't tell you much about the ecological consequences, and it doesn't tell you much about the satisfaction of the different stakeholders. So that's why during the pandemic, we have developed something which we call meaningful tourism, where we say we have to make sure that all the stakeholders involved have benefits, and good quality benefits and satisfaction. And I think I will talk more about this in the next model. Yes, so talking about Belgium as a brand. So of course you have places like France or Italy, where you don't have to tell anybody in China about this country. So the existence of these countries is well known. But so we had also in a webinar like this one last week in Slovenia and Ljubljana, and of course for a place like Slovenia, they have to spend all their marketing money on telling people that they are existing, because very few people have ever heard about this country in China. So Belgium, I think, has a advantage that even though it is not a very big country, you have, first of all, Brussels as the capital of the European Union, and so also in Chinese news that will be mentioned very often. So people will see pictures of Brussels in their news. I'm not sure if they always connect that Brussels and Belgium together, but of course, as the German team has been experiencing very recently, you are very good at football, and football is something which in China is very important. So you have hundreds of millions of Chinese ardent football fans, and as the Chinese team, unfortunately, until now has not been very successful, they follow, of course, also the Belgian football team and its successes. So that is certainly something which will help a lot to put Belgium on the map for many Chinese. And of course, we had in the last 15 years with this package tours where people were rushing from one country to another, a lot of Chinese who might not even have stayed overnight for one night in Belgium, but on the way from the Netherlands to France would have stayed half a day in Belgium. So at least, so if somebody's interested in Belgium, it will not be difficult to find somebody who has already been there, if only for a short time. So therefore, I think given the size of the country and the size of the population, you are in a positive situation that you have less problems than other countries the same size to be known. Now, of course, what you have to fill up is what is the content, and I will not, as a foreigner, I will not start any discussion about how useful it is to sell the Flemish part and the Wallonian part of Belgium in many ways as two different entities. That is a decision which is not for me to make comments on, but of course it is something where also Belgium has a good chance in starting, not talking about the destination, so it's easily reachable from many parts of Europe, but talking about the activities of what you can do. And I can say, for example, I've been working with the Wallonie Tourism Board in the past, and we went to a small, nice city south of Brussels called, if I remember rightly, Dinant, which is the home of Mr. Sax, gentleman who invented the saxophone. And we have been discussing that would be, for instance, for the Chinese people who are interested in jazz music and saxophone music, that would be a very nice thing to organize something where they can go and where they can experience the music there. And this is about a niche market. So of course in China, 96% of the Chinese don't care about jazz, probably don't even know what is jazz. So you will have maybe just a few percent of Chinese who know what jazz is, and even less who care about jazz. But the probability that somebody in China who cares about jazz and cares about saxophones has enough money to travel to Europe is rather high, because this will be rather the educated people. So, and if you tell them, okay, you can go to the place which is the home of the saxophone, where the guy who invented it was born, and there is a little museum, and there is a festival or something like that. So that will bring Chinese tourists to this little town, which is also nice. They have a kind of castle and there's a river, so it's also a nice place by itself. And so the common wisdom is Chinese people don't care about saxophones and jazz, which is not necessarily true. Even saying that in the 1920s, Shanghai was actually one of the big jazz cities in the world. How to build a brand? Common wisdom again is social media, and you have a lot of destinations and national tourism organizations spending lots of money in producing videos and putting them on WeChat and on Weibo, and hoping that this helps to sell the destination. If you look at the statistics from a company called Dragon Trail, they do every week statistics, how many people have been watching this, and you can see that, for instance, around March 1st, so at a time now when people are extremely interested in planning their trip abroad, there are only 2 NTOs on this list having more than 10,000 views for one post, and 10,000 for China is absolutely nothing. So you have TikTok or other Weibo and WeChat videos which are watched by tens of millions of people. So 10,000 is absolutely nothing. So therefore, which might be a bit of a surprise for some of you, I would say this is simply a waste of money. And if you look at Weibo, it's exactly the same. So you have 1 million followers, hooray! But if you see how many of these people looked at the postings, so you have an engagement rate of something like 0.1% or so. So does it mean you should not use social media? No. What it means is you should use social media with user-generated content. So not you as a destination or as a hotel group or airline producing wonderful, fancy, expensive videos which are perceived as what they are: advertisement, propaganda. Chinese people know a lot about propaganda. But instead, if you are investing the money into satisfied customers, that these satisfied customers tell their friends on social media about the wonderful experience they had in a specific place or in a specific hotel or with a specific museum or shop or whatever, this is something which will reach maybe also only a couple of thousand people, but this will be people who will trust the information because it comes from one of them. It's not advertisement. And also the friends of people having enough money to travel to Europe are probably also having enough money to travel to Europe. So you are talking to the right kind of people. So spending the money rather on understanding what do the different kind of customers want, which kind of market segment we should concentrate on, and providing very good quality so that people are becoming your brand ambassador and telling their peers about how wonderful this is. This is much more successful, and now with the restart of the Chinese outbound tourism, where a lot of people will be curious to hear the experiences of those who go first, you have a very good opportunity that people will actually listen to what their peers are saying. So communication and distribution channels, I think I will not talk too much about this. Key point is to say, yes, of course, the internet is very, very important, and a normal Chinese spends 6.5 hours per day on the mobile phone. And from my experience, for younger Chinese, it is rather 16 hours. So when they're not sleeping, they're inside their phone. China has a social media landscape which is completely different from ours. So obviously there's no Facebook, no YouTube, no Twitter. So there are others, and this is changing constantly. So therefore, don't try to understand all this, because it's all within 6 months, it will be different again. And a lot of this is about lifestyle, so that certain channels are catering for a certain kind of people, young, urban, successful women, or tech nerds, or whatever. They all have their different social media channels, and so if you want to use this, you better have somebody helping you with that. So key point is, so what we call warm square, so the word of mouth and the word of the mouse. So what people hear from their physical neighbors, friends, relatives, colleagues is important, but also what they hear from their online friends. So we have portals like Mafangbo and Xiongyo, where every day millions and millions of people share their experiences. And in the last 3 years, people spent a lot of time they had in lockdown to write up their travel experiences before the pandemic. So, and people spent a lot of time reading this stuff. So they have, many have gained a lot of information about a lot of different destinations. So, and connected to this, so the move from KOLs, key opinion leaders, who pay sometimes lots of money for saying, I like this place, but everybody knows they're paid for that, towards KOCs, key opinion customers. So what we said, people who are actually telling their friends and their network about their experience, which are more believed and also, yeah, less expensive. So should we then still work with tour operators? Yes, you should. At the same time, so keep in mind that many of the tour operators are also no longer there. So there's also, of course, for those who were concentrating on outbound, the last 3 years have been very bad, and not all of them were supported by the government. But so for this customized tours, tour operators are still important business partners, especially the OTAs, the online travel agencies. Trip.com is the biggest, well, that should be fish, not fist, in the pond. But there's also Tunar, which is now owned by Trip.com, but there's also Flicky, owned by Alibaba. Probably, as you may have seen in the news, now Alibaba will be destroyed and cut up in 5 or 6 different pieces. So Flicky will probably be independent in the near future. And there's 2 new, and there's Meituan, and there are a couple of others. So many people in China also do everything online, so, and they use OTAs. But also there are, beside traditional tour operators and OTAs, there are other possible partners in B2B. So for instance, every bank has a VIP club for people who spend a certain amount of money on with their credit card each year, or you have, of course, the club of the Porsche car owners or stuff like that. These are also interesting people to work with for specific offers. And there are still the fairs. This year, after a break of 3 years, we have physical fairs again in China, and the closest one is on May 19 to 21, the GITF Guangzhou International Travel Fair. So that will be the first opportunity to go to China and to see who's still there, to meet old partners, new partners, and also at the fair we are organizing an international conference. So therefore, if you have a chance or if you have somebody in China, so please make sure that on May 20th you join the conference. Entrance is free. Or if you are traveling to China in May, maybe you can put your agenda in a way that you can include GITF, because this is simply the first opportunity on a big way to meet again with the Chinese business partners, and it is also a European event, because the companies behind GITF are the Head of Affair and the Fiera Milano. And then later in the year, there is also, of course, after 3 years break, ITB China in Shanghai in September, and in November, there will be the oldest outbound fair, COTTM, China Outbound Travel and Tourism Market, in Beijing, which is organized by a British company, Tarsus. So we have Guangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing, and it's still certainly useful to go there, not only for the fair itself, but also to get a feeling how China has developed and how China has changed during that period of time. So that was the second module. Again, are there any immediate questions?
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. I see that we have no immediate questions following this this module. Maybe if you could share some success stories, possibly from some more, actually, given that you've already provided some during the event, with a focus on what could Belgian companies do, more in the specific, to have. So yeah, so some anecdotes maybe to share that can be used as a reference for the future.
Okay, well, maybe I mentioned Waterloo, and certainly if you ask Chinese people about famous European historical figures, Napoleon is certainly one of them. And so actually there, I was involved in a European Union project to promote Napoleon as a reason to travel to Europe, and we found that a lot of people might not be very familiar in details, but the name Napoleon everybody has heard, and Chinese have on average very high meaning of successful generals, but also people daring to take on the whole world. And we mentioned that there are now more senior citizens, so getting out of the daily work and having some money to spend. Many of these people, when they were young, there was a cultural revolution, so they couldn't study at the university. So there are, for instance, associations called senior citizens universities. So there, and these people are interested in learning something, so catching up what they couldn't get as a young person, and so for this you can certainly organize something that for a week you say, okay, we go to Belgium, and we go to several places, and maybe combining this with France. So we go to France and Belgium, and we go to places which are connected with Napoleon, and there is you engage a real professor of history maybe a retired one, who will give lectures to the people, and then you go and see the places, and maybe some of the participants will say, "Oh, today I'm too tired. I want to stay in the hotel." They don't join the outing, but others will be very happy to do that. And so this is something where you can be very successful in getting this kind of customers, and they will stay longer with you. They will spend more money with you. And the good news is that these senior citizens universities are very well organized. And I know from some companies working with such organizations, and they, one colleague told me that they were working with the provincial section of a senior university in Zhejiang, and they have 1.5 million members. So, which means if you are having this trip organized 1 or 2 times to the satisfaction of the people, they will tell their friends about it, and then you can stop marketing, and you will have forever one group coming after the other. So that is just maybe one example where people are and for younger people, we mentioned, so do a, I don't know, 2-day or 3-day more extensive workshop, visiting 10 different breweries or 5 different breweries, and really give them opportunity to look behind the scenes so that they can learn, okay, how the beer is made. Also, maybe if this is a startup, an SME company, like many craft beer producers, also learn about the business model, so how some school teacher decided to become an entrepreneur and start this beer company. They will also be very interested to learn about this part. So there are a lot of things where what you have to do is you have to understand what special interests are there in the market, and then put up a program accordingly. So it is just to say, well, come to Brussels, we have Mannequin Piss and the Atomium. That will not be enough. So that is enough for a 2-hour stopover, but that is not where you actually earn money, or where you are actually building the brand. So that is the key point. As we said, don't be afraid of niches. In China, the niche normally has hundreds of thousands of people. So and they're very often easy to find, because in China, most of them are well organized under government control, so you can identify them very easily. And well, talking about football, if you can organize a trip visiting some Belgian football stadiums, and maybe having a greet and meet photo opportunity with one of the Belgian national team players, that will be also something where certainly you will have a lot of Chinese people interested in that. And that can be, they might not travel from China only for that to Belgium, but I think if you can create a 3-day module within a trip to Europe, that you say, okay, you go somewhere else, but for the 3 days you come here, and we do 3 days Belgian football a module. So that will be something you can find a lot of people interested in. And again, you would have no competition, so you can ask for a good price. Those people who want to do this, they will not care if it's $100 or 100 euros more or 100 euros less in the price. So let us come to the last point, and the optimistic headline. We used to have a shortage of coffins in China. Now we have a shortage of wedding dresses. So because also the Chinese, like everybody on this planet who has enough money to travel internationally, is eagerly awaiting the opportunity to travel again, and it looks like that we are now close to the situation that it really is starting again. And so the pandemic is over and people just don't talk about this anymore. But clearly the travel behavior has changed. So you can see it's not only about going to cities, but also nature-based activities, outdoor activities have become more important. So a nice walk in a nice park or some, or maybe taking a boat trip on one of the rivers. That is something which people are interested, and especially interesting going to new places. So it's not anymore everybody goes to the Eiffel Tower. I also have to go to the Eiffel Tower, but it's now rather I am discovering new places where, so I go to a place where not many other people have been going to, and that can be, I don't know, the hometown of the inventor of the saxophone, for instance. So, and clearly we still will have this package tours rushing around Europe, but it will be much less. And even the package tours now have elements. You can see what is offering now, where people are having half a day free time, or so it's not so much that they are pushed around anymore. So they still want to see the world with their own eyes. They still don't trust what the government is telling them. It's still a lot about social prestige, so that they can show to their peers, but also to themselves, hey, I made it, I have enough money to travel. And especially now after 3 years time of developing this serious leisure interest, so following your hobby, which might be connected to playing golf, or some kind of architecture or music or food or whatever. And so a lot of other things, health, well, Spa is a city in Belgium. So going to spas, having medical examinations and so on. Religion, well, there are more Christians in China than there are Christians in Germany, for instance, or in France, for that matter. So visiting churches, visiting holy places is also something which lots of Chinese people will be interested in. And so we mentioned some of the needs. One to point out here is also sustainability has become much more of a topic also now for Chinese travelers, because also in China there were the effects of climate change become more and more visible. So, and especially for younger people, they are all saying in surveys that they're interested to learn about what you can do to minimize your carbon footprint, and what other activities are there for an increase of sustainable behavior. So numbers, I dare to show you the quarterly forecast, which is of course bearing further black swan events. So hoping that there's no virus, that the bird flu is not jumping over to human beings, and there is hopefully no attack on Taiwan, and ugly things like that. So if assuming that this is not happening, so our forecast is that for the first half of 2023, we will see about 20 million border crossings, and in the second half of 2023, about 80 million, so that we have 100 or maybe a little bit more then 100 million, and then in 2024 coming back to the 2019 level of 170 million. For Europe, it will be a bit slower, and so this is Europe without Russia, so that from 2 million border crossings in the first half to 4 million border crossings in the second half, so that we will have 6 million, which is about half, a little bit more than half of what we had, 11 million in 2019, and again in 2024 having the 11 million back, which was approximately the level we reached in 2019. So you can come back in a year and have a look at the numbers, how much, how correct they were. But I think this is clearly, if nothing happens, so from the all the surveys, what the Chinese saying about their wish to travel, and this is not only leisure. This is of course also a lot of other reasons and pent up demand. So we said wedding dresses in the last 3 years. A lot of Chinese couples got married, but they didn't have a proper party, and they didn't have a honeymoon trip. So they have to. So 3 years of newlyweds have to catch up with the honeymoon trips. For 3 years, you had people who would be given a free business holiday trip because they have 25 years working in one company, stuff like that. So for 3 years, they had to wait for their trip. So there's a lot of pent up demand, which I think we will see, especially in starting in the second half of this year. For Europe, well, what we clearly see is we see more competition than before. So domestic tourism is not seen anymore as less valuable, and you can do duty-free shopping inside China now. With this idea of discovering other destinations, that also of course includes to go to other continents, South America, Africa, and so on. And the key point is that many Chinese will tell you, okay, I've already been to France, I've already been to Italy, I've already been to Belgium, because I went to the main city, and why should I go back there a second time? So what we are talking about for Europe in the coming years is, to a big extent, repeat visitors. So telling people, yeah, okay, you have been to Brussels, but Belgium is much more than that. And maybe even within Brussels, there are some interesting things to do you didn't do because you were only there for 1 day or even less. So it is not so much to convince people come to Belgium for the first time, because many people already have been there. It is rather to tell them, okay, come here to this place because there is some special activity. Is exactly what you are looking for. Also, of course, one of the big attractions for Europe, trips to Europe, has been shopping at the original homes of the luxury brands, which is still important, but not as important as before. And in Hainan, in other places, you can do this as well. And the last point is, when we talk about the economy, I said before, the rich people still have enough money to travel, but the number of people who are moving up in the society, so from middle class to upper middle class, from being able to spend money on a trip to Thailand to being able to spend money on a trip to Europe, the growth of this part of the society is slowing down. So it gets harder now, and will probably be harder in the coming years, with the slowdown of the Chinese economy to really move up in the society and having more loose change in your pocket you can spend on stuff like international travel. So that will be something again which makes it more important to look at repeat visitors, that those people who already had enough money to travel in 2019 to bring them back. So so therefore, how many people come to China, to Europe from China is not only a question of the demand side, who wants to come, but also what are we offering them? What reasons are we giving them to come to China? And well, a few examples here. For instance, in China, there is something called red tourism, which is about the glorious Communist Party history and the history of the communist movement in general. And of course, in Belgium, famously, you have this restaurant at the Grand Place in Brussels, the Maison du Cygne, which used to be a workers' pub, and it's supposed to be the place where Marx and Engels wrote part of the Communist Manifesto. So for many Chinese people, this is now a place to go to have a meal there to celebrate Karl Marx. Yeah, so supporting this idea of discovering new places and for giving people reasons to go to specific places and to revisit destinations. And when we talk about shopping, and I think again Belgium is in a good position here, it is not just for luxury brands, but for authentic regional products, and so food and beverages, I think, more for Belgium, a very good example of that. So very briefly, so as I said, we have this approach of meaningful tourism, which is not only for the Chinese market, but also for the Chinese market. And very simply said, so we identified 6 main stakeholders in tourism, which are the travelers, the host communities, the employees in the service providing companies, the companies themselves, the governments, and the environment, aka future generations. And tourism, from our position, only works if all 6 stakeholders getting better quality, more benefits, and higher levels of satisfaction. Otherwise, you end up with travelers not coming, host communities protesting against too much tourism, employees not willing to work in the industry, companies not earning enough money, governments not earning enough taxes, and environmental degradation and more climate change. So therefore, you have to develop KPIs based on this quality, benefits, and satisfactions for all 6 main stakeholders groups. And we have developed a meaningful tourism index, which is almost finished. So in a couple of weeks, we will publish this for free as a book, and you can call the 88 most important tourism countries. Belgium, of course, is included in that. So yeah, one example, and with that I will come to the end. The European Union, the European Travel Commission, started a program already 2 years ago, which is called Europe Invites the Curious. So this is an idea to say, let's concentrate, especially for the visitors from outside of Europe, on those people who really are interested in what Europe stands for. So we don't want to have lots and lots of people coming in package tours and rushing around, taking photos of stuff they don't even understand what is it. We want to concentrate on those people who have what I would call a special interest in Europe. And I think this is a very good program. And you can see they concentrate on three topics, which is nature, culture, and history. And you can find this online, and there are some examples of destinations taking part in that. So of course, for one major market addressed by this Curiosity program is the Chinese market. So this is something, have a look, and I'm sure that it's a good idea to join this in welcoming the curious people to Europe as well. So I think I will skip this one because I don't have time for that. So last point to say, we cannot go back to the good old times, because if for any other reason, climate change is making this, or the climate catastrophe is making this impossible. And this is also something the Chinese are aware of. So last year, mostly reported in the Western media very much. So China had the worst heat wave in the history of mankind, because it was affecting 900 million people for a period of 2 months flat. So there was a night in Chongqing, which has 35 million inhabitants, where the minimum temperature was 36 degrees. So this is a temperature of blood. So the minimum temperature was not going below that level. So, and also you can see this news report that many of the rivers, including the mighty Yangtze River, in the summer were almost empty, almost no water left there. So that as a result, 85% of all Chinese travelers are saying that they're interested to learn about sustainability and to reduce their ecological footprint, because also for China, this is not science fiction, but this is happening now. And if you look at the forecasts from the water level of the oceans rising, that then you see that if nothing happens by 2050, Shanghai will simply be underwater. Shanghai will not exist anymore because there will be fishes swimming around. So in this in the book we published, so I wrote in the introduction that in 25 years the climate catastrophe will probably put an end to international tourism. I hope I'm not right, but it looks like. But for this 25 years, China will play an important part in global tourism. So we have to be aware of the fact that there will be a constant change for the worse, and it will be well, maybe slower or faster, depending how much we finally agree to do about it. But it will get worse. That is something which already is not can only be turned around in quite a number of decades, and not shorter than that. And that will also be clearly becoming important for the Chinese market. To finish on a more positive note, we are also, after 3 years, for the first time do something called the Chinese Tourist Welcome Award, which we do since 2004. So if you are already as a destination, as a company in Belgium or wherever you are now at the moment, already, if you're doing something for the Chinese market, please make sure to apply for the award. So we have 5 categories, and gold, silver, bronze for each of them, and the awards will be given on May 20th at the conference at the GATF International Tourism Conference. So just Google it and you will find more details for that. That's it from my side. I hope I could help you a bit to understand the market and how it is likely to develop. And the chances we have, but also that we have to do something if we want to have more satisfied Chinese visitors in the coming years.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Thank you very much for the presentation. I know we are a couple minutes late, but if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask them. We can still pick up a couple of them now. I see that we have we've received a thank you from Ireland. And should you, I see that we have no other questions right now. So in case you might feel the need to ask any other question as a follow-up to this event, and they might pop up later on while thinking about what we've discussed today, do not hesitate to reach out to us. I've included my email address in the common chat here. You can also find in the following slide. It's davide.orlandi@eusmecentre.org.cn. Since we have not received any questions, I would like, first of all, to thank you all for taking part today. Of course, thank you also to our speaker, Professor Wolfgang Georg-Art, to the co-organizer, the Belgian Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and its chairman, Mr. De Witt. Thank you to the Italy-China Council Foundation. At the end of the webinar, you will also have the chance to fill out a short post-attendee survey. If you could take a couple of minutes to fill that out, it would be of huge help for us. We can use that in order to ameliorate our next webinars for the future. And so that would be it from our side. Once again, thank you very much for taking part today. Do not hesitate to reach out to us, and hopefully we will have the chance to meet again in the future, either in person, hopefully, or online. So once again, thank you to all of you, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.